Good morning, Bucknutters. Look at that, 9 a.m. sharp Eastern. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. I am Dan Rubin. I'll be joined shortly by Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter. This podcast covers the national champions. And by the way, happy 1 month anniversary of being a national champion. We're going to ask the guys how their lives have changed. Mine has changed. It's better. Always better to win. There is a certain vibe when you're the national champ. When you wake up every day, the sun shines a little brighter. So we're going to dive into that. First of all, I want to make sure you are smelling good and feeling good, and that's where Mando comes in. As you know, Mando's been a longtime sponsor of the show. We are very appreciative of that. If you're getting ready for that first date, you got a little love in your life, you're trying to get a little action going, what are you thinking about leading up to it? New haircut? Check out your boy here. You cleaned your car out. Maybe you're nervous about doing something wrong. Non-negotiables for a first date. Deodorant. Mando. Put it everywhere. You get a little extra nervous? Just know this stuff was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was misguided and mistreated. Clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. As a special offer for Bucknuts listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates over 40% off your starter pack. That code, Bucknuts, at shopmando.com. Please support the show and tell them we sent you. Speaking of guys who need support, Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter are here. Gentlemen, it's been officially 1 month that we've been national champions. It's been glorious. Quickly, just off the top of your head, Bill, what are the changes you've noticed on the recruiting trail now that you walk in and show the big ring every time you talk to somebody?
Well, I think that when you call guys, I think it kind of is a little bit, I could say, more a help as a door opener, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
They know you're calling, and you cover Ohio State, so that is a good thing. You cover the national champions, and I think from a recruiting standpoint for Ohio State, it helps them. I mean, who doesn't want to be recruited by the national champions? Probably almost no one out there. So I think it opens the doors for them, which means there are more guys to some extent to cover, and they tend to be the guys at the top of the food chain, so to speak. So it's all a positive as far as I'm concerned.
Mark, I noticed over the past few years, you have as much access to assistant coaches from other programs. And there's always a little bit of, I don't want to say angst, but I would say jealousy that comes through a little bit. Has that been tamed at all? Or do they just think, oh, those guys just had all the players?
There's always that jealousy of what they have to work with. And I don't know if it's bitterness, because they all know that if they were tapped on the shoulder to go there in any capacity, they would all leave their current jobs in 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. So there's a snideness sometimes about, the lucky, but I think everyone in the coaching profession realizes how tough it is to pull something like this off. So there's a respect. If you saw the Ohio High School Coaches Association convention and Ryan Day was there, and you saw the pride of all the coaches taking pictures with them and giving them gifts and just what it does for the brand of Ohio football in general. There was a map of the entire country put out, and it had listed by state how many players were from Ohio in the national championship game. And Ohio had more than any other state because Notre Dame and Ohio, Ohio State have plenty of those kids. So for years, those maps have been draped with Texas, California, Florida, Georgia, where you had 2 left feet if you didn't play football down south. And if you weren't an SEC program, So yeah, and I like that Penn State was up there because that holds a lot of water for this Northeast Ohio or northern area. So that's been good. And I have two lives. I'm Batman and I'm Bruce Wayne. When I'm Batman, I'm with the Bucknuts and I'm Ohio State. But when I'm Bruce Wayne and I'm scouting Ohio, I have to be Switzerland. I can't wear Ohio State
Right.
favoritism or anything like that. I really have to, whether you're Tiffin or you're Ohio State, I got to treat everybody the same. So I don't think people identify me and give me any respect for all the fun I had this year doing the Buckeye in the Sky. And it really, for me, is cool to be the guy that breaks all that down and saw how this sausage was made throughout the year, saw the things Knowles did on defense at a detailed level, and Coach Kelly, the intricacy of the plays, and every week the wrinkles and explaining it to everybody. And for it to all to shake out is the best anyone could do it in the country this year. I'll remember this season for a while and breaking it down. And of course, I'll have the videos forever if we ever want to go back and relive it.
And just like when they beat the Fighting Marcus Mariotas, it was the first of it, the new kind. So anytime they discuss the playoffs from a historical fashion going forward, this will be the one they circle. There's no really arguing this. It's the hardest championship anyone's had to win. Go back and look at what they had to do. Just think about what they had to do in context of what it usually takes to win a championship. They had no easy road. No offense. There was no SMU, Boise State, or Arizona State on their schedule. I mean, they earned it in a negative way, but they earned their trip there, and it was spectacular, and we will be looking back on that, I think, for a long time. So we'll be bringing it up here from time to time, especially when there's snow on the ground and it feels like football's far away. It's good to talk about how you're the champs, which is enjoyable.
I also think it's done something for the positivity of the message boards and the website, and
which is more unbelievable.
Which really, yeah. Let's not. I didn't want to interrupt and interject again, but boy, it's just such a nicer tone, and we can talk about things factually, and there's not a slant that someone's screwing up this whole thing. And I mean, there were bumps. I mean, there were losses, and there were losses last year, and we deal with that stuff, but I just think it's been much nicer to start off a podcast every morning when you say home of the national champions.
Yeah, looking back, remember how many people on our message board when the brackets came out said, yeah, what is Ohio State's chances of getting through that gauntlet and winning it all? There were a lot of that type of comments on our board, and lo and behold, they got through that gauntlet. They won it all, and convincingly. Well, there was no doubt who the best team was in each one of those games. Absolutely no doubt.
Great points that you guys made. Mark, your point about how the SEC had garnered that time as talk of supremacy and dominance. There's been a ton of coverage since about how the Big Ten's now theoretically the top dog. Even being in the discussion with the SEC has been cool. And it's just been incredible. It's hard to kind of get your mind around, especially after what they went through. If you have not watched the about 25-minute video that Ohio State has put out from behind the scenes, you are missing out. I'd be lying if I didn't say I welled up a couple times during that. I'm a softie, but it's, you're going to want to put the pads on, go out there and tear your Achilles after you see this, because it's fantastic. All right.
Was that on Netflix? Was there something on Netflix I saw?
No. I think there is under construction. There is a Netflix deep dive, but this is just like a glorified behind the scenes, footage of, their meetings, their first meeting after the loss in the game. And then just kind of chronicles along the way. And they get such incredible access, man. I mean, that's their team. But access is it's spectacular. And by the way, it's a fun thing to watch. They're winning the national championship. So it's like, you're wallowing in the mud, and it's like a pig in blank. So it's just tremendous. it distracts me every time I think about it. I'll sometimes be driving. I'll be like, oh my God, we're national champs. And I'll just like, my shoulder injury doesn't feel as bad anymore that I always had. Anyway. All right. One thing I want to talk about today for sure is we're going to talk about top targets. 24/7 Sports, one of the things they offer that the other sites don't is a super detailed target list that Bill updates routinely. This isn't just guys with offers. Most of them have them, but it really gives you a good sense of who they're going after. Now, because it's Ohio State, it looks like, a who's who of the United States because it's listed by position. So it's another way to kind of get a sense of who's good. So I'll throw that up here. And you can see there right now, it starts at the top and it says top targets and then it goes through there. And you can see the names on there are pretty obvious. Zion Ailey, who's the defensive end, Jackson Cantwell, Emmanuel Iacho, we've talked about forever, Jared Curtis, Chris Henry Jr., who we're going to start with here. Mark talked about how he does Buckeye in the Sky. We had our first new one in a while here up recently, and that was the first. Oh my God, dude, that's a birthmark, dog. I'll live. I was kissed by the angels. It's a heart. I've been told that my whole life. If that's not true, someone send me a memo because I gotta talk to my parents. First one I'm gonna do is Chris Henry because we did Evan Goodwin, Bill. Evan Goodwin, Bauxite, Arkansas. We did him earlier in the week. That was Tyler Bowen's first offer. And then we are doing Chris Henry tomorrow. That one's going to be free. So those of you who are not premium subscribers to Bucknuts that have never seen a commitment evaluation from Mark, we're going to put up a new one for Chris Henry tomorrow. It's going to be free. And then you can decide if you want to commit long term. That's how that's going to work. So, Bill, speaking of top targets, Chris Henry, should we be worried?
I continue to like a lot Ohio State's chances as long as Ryan Day and Brian Hartline are at Ohio State. And there's no reason to think they're not going to be at Ohio State for a long time. Ryan Day just got a contract extension. Brian Hartline just got a promotion. He's now the OC. So, but you do have to go through, I guess, a little bit along the lines of Jeremiah Smith. You got to go through the process. He's going to take official visits. In fact, he's got 4 official visits set up. He's going to go to Miami the first weekend in June, or if you want to call it the last weekend of May 30th to June 1st. He'll go to Miami. He'll go to USC after that. And of course, USC is now in his backyard because he's at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California, rather than the great state of Ohio. He'll go to Oregon June 13th, and then you like it to see it this way, especially with somebody like Chris Henry. The Buckeyes have the last official visit June 20th. But again, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to take, in my mind, a major upheaval, a major lift for anybody to get him away from Ohio State.
Did you guys hear that? Did that come through there? I apologize if it did. I'm trying to put in the YouTube video here. If you go into the chat right now, you can see the link to the YouTube. Marcus, your thoughts on Chris Henry?
I hope we don't lose him. I think I worry more than Bill does, but I'm not as in touch as Bill is. But once we don't have him surrounded in Ohio like we used to, I feel like there's outside influences. And I went to the class of 2027 to look at some of those targets just to give the viewers a little more to chew on there. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be a national guy. I mean, I know he's committed, but I said this on the podcast the other day. The money that's going to be flowing in this cycle is going to be far surpassed what we saw last year. And the dirty tricks that we saw last year are going to be far surpassed. So a lot of kids are going to go out and get a best offer or whatever it may be, and people are going to come in and offer more. And the guys that are the highest priority to have this happen are these guys at the top of this list. They're not doing it for 3 stars and 4 stars. They're only going to do it for these high-profile 5 stars. So as long as you're one of those guys, I think it's going to be down to the end. And I think, Brian Hartline, definitely is going to have his hands on this. I mean, I think that we're as in good a shape as you could possibly be in with someone recruiting him. But not to be negative Nelly, but yeah, Chris Henry, he's gonna have some suitors. it's almost like I should use this comparison. Like he's going to prom with us, but there's a lot of other hot girls in the school out there that are walking by him every day. And, he may have a wandering eye if the right girl walks by.
Speaking of the money thing that you mentioned, Mark, and the inflation, if you want to call it that, NIL inflation. If you were a $2 million guy, and I'm just throwing out, and I'm not saying this was Chris Henry. If you were a $2 million guy a year ago, you're probably more along the lines of 3 million or more this year. It is going up, as Mark said, is absolutely going up.
I just saw where the coach of Nebraska was talking about Dylan Raiola and saying it's $1 to $2 million for a quarterback right now. If you want a good quarterback, you're paying 1 to 2, and the inflation has hit that position first because it's such a priority position. But could you imagine that just 12 months ago or 24 months ago saying, hey, starting quarterbacks on the top 20 teams are going to be getting from $1 million to $2 million. Where's this going to be coming from? So we're there. It's happened.
I'm not that worried. I gotta tell you.
I'm not saying that's something to worry. I'm just saying it's the new, inflationary thing where we're always going to have our $2 million guy.
See, that's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. But the fact that the Nebraska's coach is saying, hey, even here, even other places, if I want to replace Raiola, I mean, it was just a general quote I saw with associated his name.
Yeah.
But this is the new market.
Yeah, I'm gonna read our next ad here from Factor, but I'll say this beforehand. As I look at the transfer portal, and I've said this, I think earlier in the week, I'm not sure we will ever see as sexy a transfer portal as we did last time around when we added the guys we did. For a variety of reasons. The main reason being, I think while they are not Ohio State, excuse me, most Power 4 schools, meaning most schools that have guys that could play at Ohio State even via transfer, there are outliers, I get it, Logan George. Those schools have gotten their NIL in gear to the point where they're going to be able to match most offers for their elite guys. I don't think you're going to be seeing, for example, let's say West Virginia has a first-team All-American corner as a sophomore. I don't think he's going to leave for his junior year because West Virginia will be able to ante up at Ohio State maybe and come close for that guy. In the past, that's Davison Igbinosun. You know what I'm saying? And he would come. So I think that is the case. I'm not positive of that, but I get the sense from the most recent portal. Mark, hold that thought because I want to read this ad. But I get the sense from the most recent portal that it's going to take something like Nick Saban retiring, Kirby Smart retiring. Bill and I talked about this a while back, what it would take for that to happen again. It would take a school that has a plethora of dudes that Ohio State once recruited. That's really what we got to look at. All right. Before we go any further, I'm sure you're hungry. If you're a food snob like I am, or at least I've turned my kids into, are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year, Mark? Factor meals. You guys have all seen this now. Factor is everywhere. This is the future of what used to be TV dinners. This is 2 minutes. Chef-made, gourmet meals, dietitian approved, ready to heat and eat, like I said, in 2 minutes. Fresh, fully prepared for any active, busy lifestyle. There's tons of choices. You can get Factor Keto meals. You get a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. They check your diet and exercise. You can even do that. 40 options, 8 dietary preferences. Eat smart with Factor. You get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Mark, you had something to say.
I think I like where your brain is headed with that, with other schools ramping up, taking care of their top players. No, they're not going to have the same cap as Ohio State, and they're not going to have the same purchase power. But at a certain point, you're right. Some of these guys are going to be harder to steal from the transfer portal. But again, this is wild, wild West territory. The stories I'm getting out of the portal, I'm about the agents coming in. just some of the 7-on-7 stuff, and this is a little digression, but in order for some of these stars to play on 7-on-7 teams for free and get flown to Texas and they're getting trained down there, who's flipping the bill for that? You want to know?
That feels like AAU to me.
But you know what? Want to know what I heard? The players are signing deals like NFL, rookies, where you know how an agent will train a rookie before the draft and put 10 or 20,000 in him to get his draft stock up. So when he goes and train, these kids are signing things that say, okay, when I get my NIL money, oh yeah, I'll pay the trainer back. I'll pay, some of these air trips back, or whatever it is. So this world of big money is out there, because if these kids think that, hey, I'm going to be signing for $200,000 in 6 months. Okay, I'll write off 5 or 10 right now, so I can go to Florida and play, and I can go get trained by this guy and get trained by that guy, because the agents in the NFL, they're going to get that money back when the kid gets drafted. But the money's so big now that when the kid hits NIL, there's guys out there getting into these kids' pockets now. So grab hold of it for the situations that are going to come of that.
As a shameless plug, as you bring up 7-on-7, Mark, in Ohio, Trey McNutt, was kind of personally responsible for 7-on-7 coming to the state of Ohio, and it is here now. And I will be having an article today or tomorrow on Bucknuts, maybe Saturday at the very latest, but most likely today, on 7-on-7 in Ohio and what has now happened, and Trey McNutt opening up that opportunity for kids in Ohio, 7-on-7. And I think people will find it interesting. So that's coming on Bucknuts.
Here's what's also coming. This is turning into basketball. I know a kid who's in the 8th grade who was spectacular. He is in Fort Worth, Texas right now. His family flew out there first class, for free, and was told, don't bring a lot of gear because you want to get a ton here. That's 8th grade. It's a good investment, by the way. But what Mark's telling you is just be smart. You know what I mean? It's funny that Dietrich comments on these, because here's who's getting those chats. Who not now, because he's graduated and he's moved on. But Devin Sanchez was in the crosshairs probably until they realized they were dealing with parents who knew what was going on. Those don't tend to be the parents they go after. Would you agree, Mark?
Man. Did you just say the quiet part out loud?
Yeah, say it. Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, this 7-on-7. Thanks, Trey McNutt. But there's Dan. You said it. AAU basketball is what's happening. It seems like the Pylon series and some of these bigger series that are televised that can bring in national revenue from, like you said, shoe companies, and the fans want to watch these guys compete. Those guys are going to get freebies. They're going to go play for free. They're going to be on teams with all other 4 stars or whatever. And that's the game. Not just like AAU. Those premier teams get flown everywhere. But, and as a dad of a young quarterback, it's about development, and you're going to pay to play in tournaments because no one cares to watch you. But you got to be thanking your lucky stars that the reason the SEC they thought was so dominant for years is they had spring ball and they had 7-on-7s, and Ohio didn't. So now that playing field can be leveled. And my son's on a 7-on-7 team, and we've done tournaments in Michigan. We got one this week, and this is big. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of kids at these tournaments getting this experience. So this is ramping up, and Bill, I want to say 60 days into this cycle of 7-on-7. It started maybe, a couple months ago. 3 years from now, mark my words, we're going to be covering these things more aptly than we are right now, because it's going to be
just doing that so we can cover your son.
Yeah.
You just want to.
And Mark, in talking to the story that I'll be doing, that I referred to, I talked to a number of sources now in regards to the Ohio 7-on-7, and it was interesting. I used to coach on the AAU basketball circuit. I was with the All Ohio program, that's pretty much the top program in Ohio when it comes to the AAU basketball scene. and I had mentioned that to several of the people I talked to involved now with the Ohio 7-on-7. And it was interesting. They said they don't want to be compared. They don't want to be associated. They don't want to be the 7-on-7 scene. Doesn't want to be like the AAU scene for basketball.
Too late.
They don't want to be that.
Oh, okay.
Great. Here's what they're basically telling you. Now, I don't know about AAU is the same way. It's case by case. Everyone deserves each individual involved. And Mark will tell you this. And I can tell you this from my own kid who is put up 21 last night for Denison, although he turned it over late. Oh, it was tough. Anyway, there are teams that are run beautifully with great people in charge. Your kids will learn a ton. I can speak for my own son. Like I said, Anthony Burns was his AAU coach. He was just named coach of the year in his league at Hawken. He was awesome and changed my son's future. There are a lot of kids who get on teams where you are underwriting the team for the guys who play all the time. And if you see a basketball team, I don't know how 7-on-7 works. If you see 14 guys out there, guess how many guys don't play in a basketball game? 14. So we started an AAU team for 8 kids, no dad coach. And you've solved 90% of your problems right there. So you got 7 on the road sometimes. So someone gets sick, you'll be fine. If this gets like that, it's not the guys that Ohio State is recruiting that are going to be affected by this. Let's be clear on that. It is not them. They are what Mark is talking about. They're the guys who play for free. No, let's use Devin Sanchez as the example again. Devin plays for free. Okay. The backup doesn't play for free. And then you travel around like that. Now, the team Devin played for is probably good enough that everyone plays for free. But this is a business, man. Go look up Spooky Nook and tell me it's not a business. Go ahead, Mark. Bill, whoever.
I'll let Bill go because I think he's about to say the same thing.
This is real quick. I'll give you the number, Dan, for a normal 7-on-7 team. They have 24 guys total.
Okay.
So
that's my fault.
You know what? The group I'm with is they're trying to do less numbers because you can have 7 guys start on defense and you can have 6 guys on offense. So, you could get a lot of kids playing time, but we found out the first time that the defensive guys, they want to play offense too. Like shock. They want the ball.
Every big guy wants to be a tight end. That's a shock.
Yeah. They're good enough. I mean, when you're dealing with the quality of players, they're two-way players, but there is room for bigger squads. But again, Dan, you guys say it, once you get if you have 24 guys on a team, do you know how long these games are? 20-minute running clocks. You get 3 possessions. A lot of teams have 2 quarterbacks, so quarterbacks will rotate possessions. Okay, so you might get 1 possession one game, 2 possessions the next game. You're playing 4 or 5 games in a tournament, okay, but there's not a lot of love to go around, so to speak. And it's a different style game. I have a lot of experience with flag football, and it's much like those tournaments growing up. And like I said, this is going to be big, but I said it right out the gate. There's 2 tiers. There's the big boy tier, and those guys are going national, and those guys are going to be on TV. You'll be seeing them on ESPN and NFL Network. The article Bill's talking about doing or did, that team's one of the best in Ohio. Raw Talent just won the Ashland tournament last week in the group we're with. These guys are all fighting for bragging rights right now. And from what I gather, when they go to the national tournaments, because we're the new kid on the block, the national syndicates are giving the Ohio kids nice coverage, and they're waiting to see what group out of Ohio, the Ohio players or whoever it may be, is the big dog, who has 7 Ohio State kids on a team, or who has the team that's chewing everybody up. And get ready. These will be household names, these teams, in 2 or 3 years.
Here's an interesting tidbit for you. You mentioned quarterback, and you mentioned going national. The Ohio national team that is going to Las Vegas this weekend.
Yeah, the quarterback is from.
Guess who might a quarterback going to Las Vegas with that team be?
RJ Day.
RJ Day. He's going to Las Vegas this weekend with the Ohio national team.
Here's
And
what's
if anybody out there doesn't know, that happens to be the son of Ryan Day, who is the sales quarterback.
Yep, and a good one at that. A lot of pictures of him. Kind of see him grow up here. It's going to be interesting too, because guys like RJ Day are going to start getting recruited to go to these teams, as well as the high schools, as well as colleges. It's funny. It used to be AAU. If you have a kid in your town who's 6'7", every AAU team in your town would tell you would call you and be like, "We're getting him. Come play with the big guy." And I'd be like, "Dude, there's one guy. We have 5 teams here." Hollywood Hager, I put that up there. He said he had that's Ohio Basketball Club out of Cleveland and King James. I think Ohio Basketball Club was Adidas and King James was Nike. Shocker. That turned into the Blue Chips, which you've seen. That was started so Bronny could play. We played when my son was going into the 8th grade or 9th grade, maybe even younger. We played King James. He went through a screen and a picture got taken. You couldn't see him. He was 5 feet. Both guards on King James were 5'11". My son was in the 3-point shooting contest. The guy who beat him won the dunk contest. So you learn early that King James could recruit. All right. Let's see if there's any more good questions up there. There was one.
And I think there's another caveat is some of these players are playing on more than one team.
Oh, no, see, I'm against that too.
Yeah, no, it's early in this process, and I've seen kids with one uniform on and then showing up somewhere else playing and then back and forth. So, but I could probably do a 30-minute podcast by myself talking about the early drama of, the jockeying of players. Like Nathan Bernard went and did a national team, and the Ohio teams, wanted that. But he also played on a local team last week in Ashland. So, he's got a couple teams he's on, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in Ohio.
This all reminds me of my days as an AAU coach.
It does so much, Bill.
Trying to protect my players from going from other teams. Oh, my goodness. It was
the first AAU team I covered in basketball as a sports writer back in Reston, Virginia, and this was in the late 90s. The public school, so it's different back in D.C. There's a real competition it's more private school basketball rather than public. The public school coaches in Northern Virginia started a team called Nova United, which was just public school teams, public school players, coached by a public school coach with the sole focus of those kids would come back to their schools. That's the only reason the team was started. They were getting pilfered so much, and that was a long time ago. So I don't know, man. It's tough. Now, once again, Ohio State's kind of above the fray, so it's not as much of an issue. Teacher says, the way these coaches call or approach you during the tournament is hilarious, but they sometimes have the kids recruit each other. That's another thing. Once social media hit with this, it was all over.
Talk about sliding into DMs.
I know, but you got adults sliding in the DMs of like 15-year-olds, which gets kind of oogie to me. That's an immediate no-go for me with any of my children. Lightly recruited for AAU, but still, that was a no-go. Go through dad and don't BS us. It was wild. But all right, let's take this from here. Bill, one guy on the targets list. This is kind of we'll finish with this. I think he's a long shot, but he has tape, and Mark will do him next week maybe. Tyler Atkinson from Georgia is one of those guys you see in high school that you want to talk about jumping off the screen. I don't even think he tackles the correct way, Bill. He hits high too much. He just hits guys so freaking hard now at this age that they go down. Your thoughts on Tyler Atkinson? I know he's a Georgia lean, and he is very comfortable with the recruiting process and being a star. This is an NIL recruit, and I mean that in a good way. I think it seems like he has his head on straight. Just your thoughts on Tyler Atkinson, and we will get out of here on that.
Whenever I think of Tyler Atkinson, and Mark will think back to this, the first thing I think about is when he was in 8th grade, going into 9th grade, he was at Ohio State's camp, and he was awesome. and he's not even in a freshman in high school yet. And I talked to him that day and started developing a relationship with him. What a nice young man, too, by the way. Not only is he an unbelievable football player, but just a nice young man. You know, he's about 6'2" or so, 210 or so pounds, and he is the real deal. As far as Ohio State's chances, I think they're one of the, I would say, probably the 5 schools that have a shot at least. You're talking Georgia, you mentioned, Dan. You're talking Clemson. You're talking Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn. Those are the schools. He has not set up official visits yet. I would be pretty surprised, very surprised, if Ohio State is not one of his official visits. Now, having said that, like you referred to, Dan, it's going to be a tough pool.
I will say this, though, and we'll get out on this. He is from Georgia, and I'm not saying he's the second. I'm not saying he's the linebacker version of Caleb Downs, but he's not far off. And the fact that he will maybe – can we just make sure Caleb Downs is his host when he comes to visit, Bill? Please make a call on that, and we'll take care of it. All right.
I think Mark Pantoni will do a great job with with making sure that the proper host is given. And also, I mentioned 5 schools. Texas, Tennessee are also in that mix very much too.
And anyone who bubbles up this year and is great with plenty of dough will probably get involved. And I think, yeah, Mark Pantoni's got it. I don't think he needs advice from us. All right, we got kind of on a tangent there. We're in the off season, so that is want to happen. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Have a good one. Nutters of Buck.